Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. There we go. Hello. Ah, there I am. Ha ha ha. Sorry, technical difficulties. Certainly not because of the equipment, more the technician behind the board. Hey, it's Matt Want sitting in for Steve Floyd, hanging out at Patriot's Lament. How's everybody doing out there today? Beautiful, beautiful, almost sunny May day in Fairbanks, Alaska. Josh Bennett. Let's get a mic check. Is it this button? Try it again.
Hello.
There we go. I got you.
Wow. I don't hear squat.
I can hear you.
All right. Oh, wow. Yep.
You got that?
My headphones are down. Hey, amazing.
All right.
And it's all the way sunny. How come you said it's mostly? Almost.
Can't you see the thing blocking the sun outside?
That's true, yeah.
I'm not there anymore. I can make fun.
Very nice. There is an ugly building blocking a lot of sunshine, right? Look at how much of it.
It's eclipsing.
Wow. And we have a special guest from Foreign Nations Unknown, Claudio Gomez.
Hello, good morning.
Are you there, Claudio?
All right.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, he's that button up there.
Which button? This
One right next to the white one. Yeah.
Go ahead, Claudio.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, there we go. There we go. One more
All right.
time, Claudio.
Good morning.
All right. Now that we got
Sweet.
all the bugs worked out,
Let's go home.
let's get started. Josh, what's going
All right.
on, man?
Okay. I wanted to start the day by talking about Boston. Since we didn't get... Well, I guess we did talk about it last week, but more things have happened. So we caught Mr. Perpetrator last week. I think he was actually found by a civilian who snuck out of his house to have a smoke, even though he was demanded to stay in. And he saw this perp in his in the boat. And there's been conflicting reviews back and forth whether he was armed or not. So it was actually a citizen that caught him. So that was kind of interesting. So the big thing all week was whether this guy should have due process. And, of course, we have Lindsey Graham and John McCain seething and foaming through their mouth like vicious rabid rabbits that he doesn't deserve due process. This guy's an enemy combatant, blah, blah, blah. So the the Justice Department decided that they would not read him his rights. They wanted to question him first and all this. And first of all, I thought that was really interesting how they decided not to Mirandize him so he wouldn't have any rights. How does that... I'm not sure how that worked.
I'm still having a hard time with getting through the enemy combatant
Yeah.
definition because, you know, I could understand if it was a bomb, say at a federal building or a state building, but this was just a public event that this individual. I mean, so you know, this definition of enemy combatant, I have almost as much difficulty with that as with not Mirandizing him. You would think that, and the whole being Mirandized, if what crime could you be accused of that you think they should waive your rights?
Yeah, that's the part. At what point are your rights waived if they're inherent and inalienable? And like you said with the enemy combatant part, so when are you considered enemy combatant? What is next week if someone just shoots someone randomly on the street?
Glad
now
you bring that up.
He's an enemy combatant.
Was the individual at Sandy Hook considered an enemy combatant?
No, he wasn't. But why not?
But
he
why
killed
not?
more people than these guys did with their pressure cooker bombs.
Right,
If
and
they
it,
actually
and
did
it was and it was no less of a tragedy. I
No.
mean, certainly, you know. I mean,
No, it's horrible.
and I'm not trying to make light of either one, but where is the line drawn, and why is an individual not, you know? And now, if I was accused, say, of something trivial like jaywalking, right? And they decided not to Mirandize me for jaywalking, and I could just say, no contest, here's the $10. That would make far more sense to me than to be accused of a heinous crime. And again, what are they afraid of by Mirandizing him? The justice system, if it is the greatest one on the planet, then what is it they have to fear by not running him through this excellent system?
And what is it that gives them the supposed right to not give him his rights? I mean, the whole basis of the American experience, the American experiment, originally was based on due process. The whole Declaration of Independence, when you look through the grievances that Jefferson and some of them wrote into the Declaration against Britain, were due process violations. You know, the right to jury, and he's put his soldiers in our homes, and on. All those things had to do with due process. We aren't given our British due process rights. So the whole basis of the American experiment with this Constitution, with this Bill of Rights, the whole meaning was, we will guarantee that you have due process in these United States.
Well, he's a civilian who committed a crime, allegedly committed a crime on civilian soil against other civilians. I'm not sure how that's an enemy combatant.
What are the parameters and how they decide that?
Depends on. It sounds like it depends on the day of the week.
Yeah, like the guy that was the first suspect to send a rising this last week, or to the politicians. Why they just didn't snatch him and bring to Guantanamo, and then they decided he was not guilty at all.
That's true. What if they decided he was an enemy combatant right off the bat and just shipped him off and held him indefinitely? And
oops.
I mean, because this guy, I mean, someone told me the other day, they said, wow, he's not really an American, this kid, the 19-year-old. He's not really an American, even though he was naturalized a year ago.
Yeah, I don't believe that there's any question as to his status to be here.
Right, at all. So it's not so disturbing that the state's doing that, because, you know, what do you expect them to do? The state warfare is the welfare of the state. It's the health of them. Of course, this is just another way for them to gain power. And interesting, you know, we talked about the National Defense Authorization Act with sections 1021, 1022 a year and 5 months ago, 2 Decembers ago, whatever. And people call us and like, you guys are stupid. I mean, the government will never do things like that. Well, guess what they used to hold him indefinitely and not give him his Mirandized rights? It was because they were authorized through this National Defense Authorization Act.
Thank you, George Bush.
Yep.
Thank you, George W.
People thought that was just in case. Oh, let's put this part in law just in case happened. It's not against us.
And then, of course, they said, well, we'll never see drones in the skies. And Obama, even though Obama does claim the right to use drones against Americans on American soil, but he promised he wouldn't do that.
Okay, but even if he doesn't, if the rule is there, then you have
the next guy.
The next guy has the ability to do it. I mean,
I think George W. would have. So launch that sucker.
Rick Perry might have him over Texas right now. Who knows?
Exactly.
The biggest problem I see is not like the government's not trying to justify why they did. What I see is people defend the government. Oh, they did right, and the people are there defending the government position. But what if, like, I mean, the guy was naturalized, right? He was not real American, just like me. What if somebody decide I am?
You're from
I'm
Wyoming.
not good. Let's take Claudio to Guantanamo.
No, the biggest problem with this whole thing is that the American people sat back and said there's nothing wrong with it. People are championing.
But that is the knee-jerk reaction to this type of tragedy, and that's where the ratcheting comes in. This is when you make slow moves to a direction. And people will...
You can just say it, totalitarianism.
People at the time will cheer for it. And then once it affects them, then they decide, ooh, these rules are too much. But until then that's how... And it's no different with, say, DWI laws or certain types of well, pretty much any type of
Law.
of regulation.
Right.
Well, not just law.
No, regulation.
But regulation. You know, where things that may or may not be able to be discerned, or aren't currently being discerned by the general public in a responsible way. They put a regulation in, and then it affects people. And
but the people it doesn't affect, they support it.
Right, the people that it doesn't affect, or the people that it benefits, then they're like, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. Smartest idea we've ever had.
I love monopolies.
The way I see that people were, they were cooking the frog slowly and raise the heat slowly. Then they were like on a heat number 6 and say, oh, let's bring up the notch a little bit. And they went all the way to 10, see how much they can handle the difference in the heat. So that's what happened in Boston. They got to 10 and the people say, ooh, feels nice and warm.
Well, you look at something like Homeland Security, and in say 1983, other than the dwindling of the Cold War, if you went up to the average person and said, you know what, to get on an airplane, you're going to have to stand in this huge line and be searched, every person searched by a government official, they would have just shook their head and said, that's ridiculous. We don't need to do that to get
from the Soviet Union.
To get from here to Chicago. I mean, that's crazy. What do you mean I can't bring a knitting needle on the airplane? This is ridiculous.
Or a bottle of water.
On 9/12, everybody's like, man, we all need to be strip searched to get on those planes because I know I'm okay and I don't mind giving up that type of liberty. But that guy standing next to me,
those brown people.
Yep.
Well, actually, it's those little grannies are the most dangerous, from what I've seen.
That Matt Want guy, if he doesn't shave for 5 days, I'm not sitting next to him on a plane.
No. Well, there's plenty of reasons.
But it's a knee-jerk reaction to these types of things.
Right, but once the state takes that, they never concede it back. I mean, look what we had. What really happened last Saturday or Friday or Saturday or whatever. The United States government declared martial law on Boston, told them to stay in their homes. They cordoned off sections of neighborhoods, and they went house to house with armed troop. Went to the house, opened the door, commanded everyone in the homes to come out with their hands up. I mean, you can go on YouTube and watch videos. They've got their machine guns trained on their heads as they march everyone out. Hands up, hands up. You have armored personnel carriers with 50 caliber machine guns on top of them, trained on the people as they come out, and the people are just running out with their hands up.
It's
and
just
they go
for
house
safety.
to house to house to house over not all of Boston, but just the different areas that they had cordoned off where they thought he was. And the people, when it was over with, cheered. And the people were screaming, USA, USA, USA. And Barack Obama, for the first time, I agreed with him. He said, today, the world has seen what type of people the American people are. Like, yeah, they sure did. Bunch of sheep. Where were the Bostonians shouting for their liberty, saying, no, you can't come in my home. Where's your warrant? Where's due process? Where's the Fourth Amendment? Gone.
Well, since there are no absolutes.
What law did they use to go into those homes?
They didn't declare martial law. They just did it without declaring.
But go outside when the guys have the machine guns and Mao Deuce on top and dum dum dum, and what would have happened? You would have got shot.
Definitely.
So gone are the days. Where was Samuel Adams? Could you imagine in 1768, the British were doing this, same things, and the Sons of Liberty put them down, and they fought them, and they burned their homes down. The agents that were doing that kind of things, so much so that the British soldiers and the agents of the British government had to stay on the ships that were in port on Boston Harbor because it was too dangerous for them to roam the streets of Boston because the people there were ticked. And why were they ticked? At this point, too, they still saw Britain as their legitimate, quote-unquote, government. They still were subjects of the crown. But they demanded that their unwritten constitutional British rights to be free and secure in their own property and possessions without due process of law. And so The only time British would come into Boston was under heavy troop because they were scared to death. If any other way, we'll have another whatever. So-and-so will get his house burned down. So-and-so will get flogged. So-and-so will get tarred and feathered. Not anymore. The same thing happened in a much more militarized way. Or you could just say the exact same thing happened. Last week, and Boston cheered. No one griped at all. People were waking up and seeing troops in their backyard, going through their garage, opening their doors, saying, out.
And again, knee-jerk reaction. I mean, I'm not agreeing with them. I'm just saying that is the knee-jerk reaction to that type of.
For one guy who wasn't even armed.
Again, I'm not agreeing with you.
I know, but I'm just
telling you.
Asinine.
It was a knee-jerk. Well,
was it knee-jerk from the state, though?
Well,
or was it, did the state do it because they're like, oh, yeah, let's see how far we can take this? Because they did. They didn't just have, like, DHS and the local police and the state troopers or whatever. There was actual military personnel on the ground there. Military soldiers. Now, isn't that against the supposed Posse Comitatus Act?
There was a Humvee with a machine gun on top.
Yeah.
There's a guy, a picture with camera, and he have a camera
out his window.
to the window, and the guy is point the gun right on his head. And, people accept that.
Yeah. So he just shut the window. Well, it was a good idea to shut the window and get back inside. Otherwise, you would have had a 750 grain bullet through your head.
And I don't think that was. I think that was complete on purpose. They did that to see how far they could go. That was definitely. They didn't need to do what they did to find one or two guys. That was not that a situation called for. They did that just to try. Let's see how far can you go and how much control we have still.
Well, I've read quite a few articles where there are a lot of people very concerned, and if that's what it, unfortunately, if that's the type of action it takes to get people to realize that this is a tipping point, then it could turn out to be a good thing, because there were quite a few articles where they said, well, wait a minute, here's one guy, and again, not trying to marginalize the tragedy.
No.
Here's one guy set off a couple of bombs, and they shut down an entire city. And they said their comparison, the person writing the article, was, so what do we do in a city where there's, say, a serial killer on the loose, where you don't know if they're going to strike again, and you don't know, and they are just randomly killing people? Do you shut the city down until they're caught? I mean, and how do you pick one over the other?
And who was the real terrorist in the whole thing? So we had these two guys go boom, boom, and that, like you said, that was terrible what happened. And if they did it, they need to be brought to justice through due process of law, then the remedy is whatever the remedy is.
Well, to me, it's just...
But who was the real terrorist? The terrorists didn't actually shut down Boston. Boston kept going around their free, It was the state that shut down Boston.
Well,
the terrorists actually didn't even do anything.
The governor or the mayor or whoever.
We're all the same. It's all one entity. They are the ones that shut down Boston. When they had the bombing, people were still going shopping and doing this and that. They weren't afeared. I mean, people were worried or whatever, but the real fear came when the state said, stay in your homes. And the loudspeakers I saw where they were going through different towns, and the guy on the loudspeaker was saying, if you want to live, and then he would say whatever, stay in your homes or shut off your phones. That was one of the things. If you want to live, shut off your cell phone.
Well, they didn't even have to shut off their cell phones because they shut down cell service. They shut down cell service in the entire metropolitan area because they didn't know if those bombs were being detonated
by remotely
through phones.
Which is odd, because wouldn't they want?
And I saw that
I
saw that on Batman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did that in Batman. The Joker blew up that guy's stomach from prison.
That's right.
Because that was his one phone call.
So that's probably where these guys got the idea.
Well, we need to stop making movies.
Especially Batman movies.
But they're awesome. Sorry, I digress. I had to throw in some weak comic relief.
No, it's fine.
What else is going on? Anything?
Not really, because this thing has kind of been eating at me for the last week, only because American people lose. The state win. Americans lose. And the biggest part of the whole thing was the people there weren't complaining. They were complying. The people there, like I said, when it was over with, they're cheering USA, USA. So you have all these conservatives on one hand. They hate Barack Obama. He is the Antichrist in a suit. They hate him, supposedly. Everything, except for when he does these wonderful things like send the military in to catch one perpetrator in a gigantic city, except for when he flies drones around Boston, which they actually came out and said, yes, they did fly some drones around to look for him. And these, like, Senators Graham and McCain, who are anti-Obama, because they're conservatives, Obama's a stinking liberal.
Well, I'm pretty disappointed in McCain's position on that.
And their whole thing was...
I'm disappointed with McCain's life.
Yeah, McCain of all people.
Man, that bad guy, he's terrible. Lindsey Graham is right behind him. And that was just in Boston. That wouldn't happen anywhere else in the United States, Josh. Boston, they are a bunch of liberals there.
but at the same time, I would be comfortable in saying that now that it's done and over with, and in hindsight, I would be willing to guess or wager that a lot of those people, now that it's sunk in what just happened to them, I bet a lot of them are truly questioning how those events unfolded.
I would hope so. I wish people, we were
in
Boston so people could call in and say, right. Yeah, I was there. And
at the time I thought it was an okay idea, but yeah, in hindsight, probably not so good. Right. You know what I mean?
And people,
but the one nice thing that I saw, and I pointed that out to my kids when we watched the video of, everybody's got cell phones and 100 different angles of it. There were, when that bomb went off, there were, obviously the crowd scattered, right? But there were probably at least a dozen people that when that bomb went off, ran into it.
Right.
To go and save other people. And that gave me hope. Because there, obviously it's a reaction. You hear a bomb, you're going to get away from it. But there were at least a dozen people that ran back, that went into it and started tearing down the fence and getting people out. And
normal civilians.
Well, yeah, I mean there was uniformed people too, but still it was both. And I have to say that was probably the most emotional and telling thing that still makes me glad about people. Those people were able to, put themselves. They didn't know if there were any other bombs going, but they went back in. And I have to say that regardless of all these other issues that came out about it, that was the nicest thing to see about humans, is that there are those people out there that are willing to do that.
And I think more so than we think. I think there's more of that than we know. I think people have that inherently in them. I hope a lot of people do. Some don't. But I mean, it's not very well. People aren't encouraged to do that anymore, though. I mean, they're encouraged to run away, do what you're told, and blah, blah, blah. So, and I saw that too, and I thought that was fantastic, because that takes a lot of bravery. That's total selflessness,
right? To
go in there,
and even for the people who did run out, I'm not questioning their motives. I mean, I'm a father of 2 children that are still at home. I'm a husband, and for some of those people, that may have been their primary concern. They may have thought to themselves, I have a wife and kids at home. I'm getting away from this bomb.
You need the boogie.
Yeah, and that's a very admirable thing. That doesn't make them cowards whatsoever. No. But then there were those other people who just thought of nothing but somebody's in there and they're hurt and I'm getting them out.
I think people, that's not matter of courage or bravery. I think some people are wired one way. One is wired to run away and seek shelter. Others just go and, hey, that's the situation, gotta fix this. Like, for example, I'm not saying I'm brave. My reaction is probably go towards the problem and help the people that are stranded. And I don't think that's bravery or anything. It's just how I am. That's my reaction is just go towards and look around and figure out stuff and try to help.
And again, it's not an issue of being a coward or not being not being brave. It's just it's just kind of how things get kicked in. Hey, we got to go to the bottom of the hour news. Welcome back to it. Patriots Lament. Matt Wants sitting in for Steve Floyd. Josh is always disappointed when I'm here. Yep. There's just not enough argument. Josh, we got a call. You want us to take a call?
I want to say something real. You got to turn my mic up now?
Yeah,
oh.
You're on.
So, someone pointed something out, and we were talking about what's the difference when are you an enemy combatant, when are you have rights, when do you don't. So basically what it comes down to is when you merely kill local civilians, you are basically just a murderer or whatever. It's when you attack the state itself that you're an enemy combatant and a terrorist and a whatever. You don't deserve rights because ultimately the state is higher than the people.
Like a bombing was a political crime, so they...
We'll try to go, I mean, you see it when, what happened, was it in Los Angeles a few months back when that freak killed a couple of police officers?
I don't know, I don't pay much attention.
And they shut down basically all of L.A. It was the biggest manhunt in L.A.'s history. And they have murders every single day. But when you touch the state, it comes back. It's going to bite. Anyways, the whole thing that happened was horrible, from the bombing on down. But which was worse, the tragedy of the bomb or the tragedy where the state comes in, cordons off areas, and totally, these people take oaths of office to uphold and defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, supposedly, and they went in and totally annihilated these people's rights by barging in their homes and treating them as if they were themselves suspect or criminals.
And the police in LA was more terrorist than anybody else because, see, they fill a truck with bullet holes and people scare even the police a lot. You hear a lot of comment about, I'm going to scare outside, police are going to get me, or people with signs say, don't shoot me, I'm not black, or...
Right. Let's take the call.
Oh, let's see here. Caller, are you there? Hello? Hello? Let's see here. You there? Hello?
They hung up on us.
They gave up.
Good.
Try back. Good.
Well, if they can't hang on that long, they probably didn't have very much to say.
I'm supposed to send a shout out to Jeremiah.
Who? Patterson?
I don't know what his last name is.
Don't. He gets all excited.
No, he's at a gun show. He's not even listening.
Maybe he's listening.
There's a gun show today.
We're getting distracted.
I know. It's your show. I'm only here to press the buttons, and I'm not doing a very good job at it.
Yeah, you hung up on our first caller. I listened to, I'm going to go back to the due process of law. And one of the reasons that this whole thing bothered me was people were calling into the normal conservative talk shows. And, for one, like Sean Hannity, he was going on and on about what a great thing, and the state did such a good job, and wow, these people are brave, and blah, blah, blah. And he had one guy call in and said, he was actually there when the cops were, and he said, yeah, I can see him now. He said, they're about a block away from me. He said, it's coming here, they'll be here pretty soon. He goes, they're having everyone come out of their homes, and this and that, and Sean's like, so are you scared, and blah, 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 and he's like, well, it's a little crazy, this whole thing. And the guy actually goes, something just doesn't seem right about this. He goes, this doesn't seem right that they can haul us out of our homes and stuff, right? And Sean's like, oh, no, just brushing it off. No, you just do what you're told. We've got to do this. We've got to start. This is the greatest enemy the evil of our time. Muslim extremist, Islamist fascism, blah, blah, blah. And the guy, actually inherently knew that something wasn't right by the fact that they're coming to his house, and in a minute he's got to put his hands on his head, get forced out while they come search every nook and cranny of his house. No warrants, no due process. That's the problem with this whole thing. And once the state takes these matters into their hands, they never give it back. They're not going to come out next week and Obama's going to go, you know what? I was going through the Bill of Rights here, and according to the Fourth Amendment, yeah, we should have had warrants before we came into your homes. Really sorry about that. We'll get you some compensation, though, because we realized that we abridged your rights, and we took oaths of office to uphold and defend those rights.
We'll get you a gift card at the Baskin and Robin. We'll send everybody a free ice cream.
Free ice cream. and some Obama bucks.
And some.
You're going to see that more and more happens too. I can guarantee you that.
We'll send you a tin of tea.
The whole reason that it happened was because, like what you said, Claudio, they were testing the waters. They always do that. What can we get away with now? And then they have all their mouthpieces on all the shows, all the news. They tell us, yes, obey the state. They did the right thing. You were protected from that one guy. You 5 million people in Boston, you almost all died from that one guy until we came in and flew drones around and went house to house and made you come out. And, you know, who knows what all happened during this whole thing.
I just refuse to live in fear. I mean, you know, like getting on an airplane. I'm not going to.
Exactly.
I'm either going to fly or not fly. I'm not going to. I mean, it's just ridiculous that I have to get searched every time I get on. To live in fear because of one thing that happened one time. Statistically, it's an anomaly. If it was a statistics problem, it would be thrown out. Like because of when you consider the billions of air miles that have been flown by the hundreds of millions of people. For that to have happened, and again, not to take away from the tragedy, but it is a statistical anomaly. It's a non-influence, and yet it has changed. It has just changed the entire way we operate because of it. And the same thing with this 19-year-old with a pressure cooker. I mean, it's just ridiculous to put 1 million people through that type of disruption because of one guy. Yeah. Especially in that manner. It would be different. I would be far more understanding if they said this guy has a nuclear device and we don't know where it is. That would make far more sense to me. If they said this guy built a dirty bomb and he stole some weapons grade whatever, but built some type of atomic device or some type of mass explosive device, that would make far greater sense to me. But some kid with a pressure cooker and a backpack, I'm just having a real hard time with that.
Well, that's the whole point with the due process part, though. It's not due process wasn't given.
I'm not talking about the due process. That's after the fact. I'm talking about just the idea
due process
of a
when
man,
people come into your homes, though. That's part of due process. I mean, the whole thing with when these things are most important when the bad things are happening, not when everything is good.
Right. It's to prevent the knee-jerk reactions.
Right. Right. It's to prevent going house to house. And the state is going to use that, and the next time they'll do it again.
And what kind of ace criminal detective work is that, where you're just randomly going house to house? There is no thought process to that. I mean, you might just start throwing darts at a map.
Well, didn't they have a shootout with them, too, the night before or something?
And
they saw him get away in a car.
So
I guess if they had a drone and they could have shot a Hellfire missile, it would have stopped it right then.
Well, if he drove a GM vehicle, they could have just shut him down based on his license plate.
Wow.
So what's happened is
OnStar.
People are defending, they don't deserve due process. So you knew he did that. There's no doubt about it. But that was not about him. It was about me and you or anybody who's listening to this radio.
He does deserve due process because...
Yeah, but some people argue, no, he don't deserve. But if he loses his due process, you are going to lose your due process too.
Well, that's the thing.
It's not about his right. It's about everybody's rights.
A good friend of mine asked me the other day, and he said, so what if it was your child that got killed? Would you be all Mr. Due Process then?
Yes.
Basically. And I
Even
said
more
yes,
so.
because what if my child was the accused bomber? I definitely would want due process. Due process, the right
Which
to be
is
secure.
probably a more likely scenario.
Wow. No. Because that would be terroristic in nature.
Having fun.
So that's when things have to be.
Well,
that's the whole point of having the rights, is when you may, or your neighbor may, or someone is accused. I mean, that's the whole point. He's accused. He's still not guilty until found guilty by a jury of his peers. And if he's found guilty, then the remedy comes.
What's the problem? Why people are so afraid of a jury? They don't think a jury would call them guilty.
Well, and to me, I, right or wrong, I would rather err on the side of freeing the guilty than punishing the innocent.
Yes.
I mean, it's just if you had to pick, it's the dilemma every justice system faces, and which side of that would you rather be on? Do you want to punish the innocent or free the guilty?
Well,
anyway,
now what the state's telling us now, though, is that we're going to bypass all that. We'll just be the judge, jury, and executioner.
It's not just just the state, though. It's all of those people saying.
Oh, I know. It's given their consent.
They're having the public support.
Yeah.
But we have bigger problems. Bigger problems. Don't you know that not only is the Justice Department having to deal with weighing in on Mirandizing this person, but right now, Lance Armstrong is living and breathing and walking a free man.
Good point.
And the Justice Department, thank God that they're there to find and punish and bring this man to justice for winning a bicycle race in France.
No joke.
Yeah, only thing he did, he cheated in a game.
Where is the sequester money? Where are the furloughs for that?
Why isn't he in Guantanamo?
I know. They need to room him with this guy from Boston.
Enemy combatant.
He is an enemy combatant.
He is.
And an overseas enemy combatant too. 7 times in France. Really.
Let's take the call.
Let's see if they're even still there. Are you still there?
Hi, this is Frank. I haven't called you for a while because our phone was out of order, but I disagreed with you at times, but I'm in 100% agreement with you today.
Wow.
About Lance Armstrong?
About him and the baseball players and the football or whatever the sport is.
Bring them to justice.
About our becoming a nation of sheeple. We've been conditioned. We've submitted to this, and it went over the line when that airline. I don't care if they even had go through, get on the plane. The chance of it, if something happened to you when you got on the plane, you'd have a far greater chance dying driving to the airport.
That's a good point.
It's the truth.
And the whole
living in the bathtub. I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm sick of. I'm ashamed to be called an American because of stuff like this.
Yeah, no, that's what's bothered me most about this whole ordeal was, like I said a little bit ago, thinking about Boston in 1765, 1768, 1775, when they were basically had the same thing happen to them, they stood up and said, no, you can't do this. And this time, the people there cheered. I mean, this is where the Sons of Liberty started. This is where the father of the revolution, Samuel Adams, was raised. And that's the town that he lived in, and stood up and shouted against British tyranny. And we cheered it. Last week, it happened, the same exact things. You could parallel them and show the exact same things. And the difference is this time they cheered it on. The people don't even know it's a slow fade to their tyranny, because the state will very well take that and take advantage of it and do it again and again and again.
Well, and back to the airlines things. To me, that is a perfect example of what private enterprise should have dealt with. If for example, I'll just use one that doesn't work, that doesn't fly in and out of here. Which is pretty much any of them. If American Airlines determined that this was not a statistical anomaly, then they could very easily say, hey, fly on American Airlines because our pilots carry guns. I mean, there's a group of people that would say, heck yeah, I'm flying with American Airlines because their pilots carry guns. You know,
I'd rather have a guy, a marshal on each plane.
Well, it doesn't have to be a federal marshal. Just have an American Airlines
handle their own security.
There's no reason they can't handle their own security. They handle fixing the jets that we trust our lives to getting on and off of. I think I can trust a guy with a gun that works for them too. I mean, it's those types of things that that was a knee-jerk reaction and just went way, way overboard. But anyway.
Well, it's like they went in the state building one time, so now we spend millions and millions to protect our state building, when in reality you could go in there with a firearm if you wished, or a bomb, and bypass security, same in the federal building. I worked for the Fish and Wildlife one time, which was a mistake for a couple of months, and I saw how porous that system is. I mean, it's just absurd. And they'll spend millions upon millions, and I mean, it just disgusts me to even call myself an American anymore. We just obey, and if you don't obey, you don't comply, you're not in compliance, then you're not patriotic. That's about all I got to say.
That's a really good point.
Thanks for the call.
That last point you just said, that you're not patriotic, is huge. That's what the state uses to get us to fall into compliance, is patriotism. Love the state. Obey the state.
Well, it's a redefined patriotism.
Right.
Redefined.
But the state defines patriotism as loyalty to it.
Well, it also defines enemy combatant.
Well, exactly. Well,
Yeah,
you're making my point.
And if you don't say you pledge allegiance to state, you're not patriotic. You're not American. And other thing, his point, he spent millions on the security, but it's not about security; it's about the millions.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at say DWI laws in Alaska. There are far cheaper and better ways to prevent DWIs from happening, but the prosecution makes no money until preventing. They only make it after the fact. And so you look at all these places that have that rent out the mandatory breathalyzers, the interlocks for your car. You know, if you get a DUI, you have to have one for a year on your car.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have those types of corporations pushing for these types of laws, and it doesn't prevent the DUI. It's an after the fact deterrent, as opposed to, it would be far easier to post it'd be far easier to post, say, a state trooper at a bar at the end of the night and say, I will let anyone who wants to voluntarily take a breathalyzer before they get in their car take one. Well, then you'd prevent hundreds of DUIs. But where's the money in that?
With one guy.
With one guy.
I would go a step further and say that you absolutely have the right to drive drunk. And if, while driving drunk, you happen to hurt, maim, kill anyone's life, liberty, or property, you are held accountable, and full compensation will be taken from you and given to the person that was injured or the family. That would be the greatest deterrent of all, because now there is no deterrent except for these little fines that you pay to the state, because some
they're
guy
not
around
little.
well, big fine, little fine, whatever. But if you
But it's not just the state. The state gets a negligible amount of that money. It's the interlock devices and the insurance companies. And
right, the monopolies
else.
that the government sets up for those things to happen. And they are all monopolies. But I would say that if you did it according to natural or common law, that you don't do anything wrong until you injure someone's life, liberty, or property, and then justice is meted out according to what you did.
I wouldn't say you have the right to drive impaired. I think you should just say you have the ability to take the risk.
I don't think that you should be thrown in jail.
Right.
I don't think you should be thrown in jail and punished merely because you were a little inebriated when you were driving, based on an arbitrary law that someone decides today's 0.04, tomorrow's 0.08, tomorrow's 1.2, tomorrow's blah, blah, blah.
I have a very good friend that says
ridiculous.
that it's a quantitative assumption on a qualitative state, meaning, like, you know, I'm 160 pounds. So if I have 2 shots of whiskey, it'll affect me differently than you at, what are you, 220?
240.
Well, look at you.
I'm fat.
at you taking 2 shots, but our blood alcohol, and I know a lot of functioning alcoholics. I mean, they get through their day all day, every day, with some type of blood alcohol content. And now it's not to justify them drinking and driving, but I'm just saying that there are people who just, you know, they make bad. But
I don't think that you should drive drunk and inebriated by any means. What I'm saying is, the punishment should be equal to what you do. And if you do hurt someone, and if you got behind the wheel drunk, knowing if I kill someone, my life is forfeit.
Well, what is the difference?
It's not manslaughter or this or that. It's murder.
What is the difference between causing a wreck impaired drinking or causing a wreck impaired texting?
Or causing a wreck make-upping.
They were both impaired driving.
Right.
Of course, now that I've said that, they're going to start putting phone interlock devices on people's cars. I
actually looked into that. It's against the law.
What is?
Something with the FCC. They won't allow you to have phone jammers inside a vehicle.
Oh yeah. Well, Android.
I'm sure the state will probably do it.
Yeah, but Android has already voluntarily put that software on there, and if you want to turn that on for your kids, so that if the phone is moving faster than 20 miles an hour, then it cannot and will not text. But
well, see,
Android's already taken care of that.
That's a good solution.
The market.
From
Apple
people.
hasn't.
The free market's taking care of it.
Apple has not. You want another call? Caller, are you there?
I'm here.
Whew.
Go ahead.
Oh, all right. You know, I think everybody's kind of off base, or they're not getting it, or otherwise I'm not understanding it on the right to remain silent.
You want us to shut up?
You already have that right at the moment of the first question.
Right.
And so
unless the state decides you don't.
Well, that's what I found so amazing. I think this is Al.
Yeah.
That's what boggled my mind, because they were saying, okay, well, we're not Mirandizing him, otherwise he'll have the right to remain silent. And it's like, what are you talking about? Whether you Mirandize him or not, he has the right to remain silent. And their whole point was, no, he doesn't, because we didn't read him the right that he can remain silent. So does that mean that, what you just said, Matt, does that mean they can force him to talk now?
Well, what's crazy is I would be willing to bet that there is an overlap between all of the people who said that George W. Bush was wrong for waterboarding people, and then saying that it's okay not to Mirandize this person. I bet there are a lot of those people who took both positions, which are completely opposite.
Well, those people that were getting waterboarding were exercising a right to remain silent. It was the government that was forcing them to say something through, torture.
No, what I'm saying is, I bet there are a lot of citizens that were jumping up and down saying that they shouldn't have waterboarded people. I bet now a lot of them are saying, "Oh, it's okay not to Mirandize this person."
Yeah.
Right.
See what I'm saying? They're failing the test of hypocrisy.
What's stupid is that they are saying themselves that they are the arbitrators of your rights. We decide whether you actually have these rights or not. When, according to our tradition, American tradition, the Declaration of Independence, all men are created with the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, endowed by the Creator, and they called it unalienable rights, which means they aren't granted by anyone, nor can they be taken away by anyone. Of course, they can do what they please to do to you, but it doesn't make it right. And just because they didn't Mirandize this guy, he still had the right to remain silent. He still has the right to trial by jury. He still has the right to face his accusers. He still has all those rights, whether Obama, McCain, or Graham says he does or not.
The Mirandizing is just, all I can ever see it for is to remind somebody that they have their right.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
I think Miranda is actually a joke, especially when they take it. You could make a pretty good case when Miranda was first. I've argued with people about Miranda a while back, but the whole point was, what do you mean? If you have to get Mirandized, then you know your rights, or if you're not Mirandized, you don't have rights. And the whole point that this became a law in the first place is silly, because now they've taken it to, well, if we don't Mirandize you, you don't have any rights. Baloney.
Well, and the other side of that is anything that you say before you've been Mirandized, can they use that against you?
Exactly.
Of course you can, because you voluntarily gave it to them.
Well, not according to the Eugene Vent case that's being retried here shortly. I just saw in the Newsminer the other day that there were 4 men convicted of beating another young man to death here in Fairbanks quite some time ago, about 15, 20 years ago. And the one individual is getting a retrial somewhat based on a confession that was taken before some due process was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they're retrying it this many years later?
He is trying to get a retrial based on that.
Basically, if I have this right, when you're Mirandized, all that is a reminder of your rights. Because you have the rights whether they tell you about them or not.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole thing of inherent, unalienable rights, isn't it?
It's the right to remain silent, and anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. But part of that also is your access to public defense.
Right.
And so, I mean, I understand the part about, if you don't talk, you don't talk. And if you do talk, they'll use that against you in the court of law. But I'm not sure where the Miranda law falls in allowing somebody public representation.
Well, what Claudio said earlier, though, is a good point when he said, what are they afraid of? If they know he did it and all this and that, why are they afraid of affording him? If what they should have done to show how benevolent they are was to Mirandize him, give him his full due process, and if he's guilty, convict him and say, look, the American system works. But they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they did the exact opposite of that. They're the terrorists, in my mind. They're the terrorists. They're the ones that shut down Boston.
But, it's like when you get pulled over, if you're carrying concealed, the law says you're supposed to immediately, tell the officer that.
Mm-hmm.
So where's your right to remain silent at then?
Why should you put yourself at a disadvantage?
Why should you incriminate yourself?
Exactly. Well, doesn't that go along with the DUI laws and all that stuff where you have to blow into a deal or isn't that incriminating yourself? And they say if you don't go along with it, then automatically you get your license suspended.
Yeah, but there's a difference between there are a lot of people who with the DWI who have successfully gotten the charges dropped, but even though the charges were dropped, once you've blown over a .08, then you automatically lose your license. The one's procedural and the other one's judicial.
What if you refuse to blow in the thing, though?
If you refuse to take a breathalyzer,
Right.
State of Alaska law is that you lose your license for 90 days.
Isn't that violating your right to due process or not to incriminate yourself?
It's procedural, and driving on public roads is not necessarily right. Got to go to the news. Be right back. We're into wine. Hello, are you there?
You are.
Woohoo! Are you?
Whoa, yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
We are officially back.
Hey, did you see Black Sabbath is coming out with a new album?
No.
I'm not making that up. Black Sabbath about to release an album. They may already have.
They're
but
still alive?
I don't know. Is it Black Sabbath, the life support album? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, more than likely. I want to read. We'll go to the phones here. I got to read something from Mr. Samuel Adams, who was considered the father of the revolution.
And makes excellent beer.
He did. Actually, it was his father that
However,
made the beer.
You mean there was another one besides the one that made the beer?
We like to stick to the truth.
Okay.
And to say, So, anyways, Samuel Adams, we're talking about Boston the first hour, and the parallel between Boston pre-revolution to Boston post-revolution. This is what Samuel Adams had this to say in one of his essays. This is just part of it. I'm not going to read his whole essay. The liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution are worth defending at all hazards. Now, their civil constitution, just to go back, he wasn't talking about the United States Constitution, blah, blah, blah. each town and county and all those, they had their own little constitutions where they would get together and say, okay, in this town you have these rights. That was actually one of the reasons why they had the revolution. Wasn't because of taxation without representation and all this and that. No, when they said that the king was violating their constitutional rights, they didn't have there wasn't a British written constitution, but these different regions, boroughs, counties, and townships had their own constitutions, and they were saying that the king and parliament was violating these things. So the liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution are worth defending at all hazards, and it is our duty to defend them against all attacks. We have received them as a fair inheritance from our worthy ancestors. They purchased them for us with toil and danger, and expensive treasure in their blood, and transmitted them to us with care and diligence. It will bring an everlasting mark of infamy on the present generation, enlightened as it is, if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence without a struggle, or be cheated out of them by the artifices of false and designing men. Of the latter, the false and designing men, of the latter we are in the most danger at present. Let us therefore be aware of this. Let us contemplate our forefathers and posterity, and resolve to maintain the rights bequeathed to us from the former for the sake of the latter. Instead of sitting down satisfied with the efforts we have already made, which is the wish of our enemies, the necessity of the times more than ever calls for our utmost circumspection, deliberation, fortitude, and perseverance. Let us remember that if we suffer tamely a lawless attack upon our liberty, we encourage it and involve others in our doom. It's a very serious consideration, which should deeply impress our minds that millions yet unborn may be the miserable sharers of these events.
Now, imagine, if you will, for 1 second, he's speaking about, being on U.S. soil. And as infringing as what happened in Boston may have been, imagine if that had happened from a foreign entity. Now, to go even further, how do you think, or why do you think other countries hate the United States when our military does what they did to Boston on foreign soil?
3 days before the Boston bombing, a military drone strike on a wedding killed 63 Pakistani children. 63 Pakistani kids at a wedding 3 days before the bombing.
So again, I mean, it's we complain and we have our issues with it happening here, and yet our
fully sanction it.
Our military under the premise of protecting democracy do this all over the place.
Yeah, but
daily.
Those kids are terrorists.
And then, what's interesting about that is when they had their funeral for all these people that were killed at that wedding, they hit it again. They hit the funeral. It was like a week later.
No loose ends.
No loose ends.
All right, we're going back to the phone.
That's the breaks.
Caller, are you there?
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
He uses the term
It is Rusty. You guys ever heard what happened to that fella floating down the river last summer in the inner tube having a couple of beers, got arrested for DUI?
I remember when that happened. I don't know.
Did he really get arrested for DUI?
Yeah, he did. I was wondering if I can get popped from floating in my hammock having a pop. I mean, isn't that a little ridiculous? Touch off on that. And I don't want any cops in the damn bar, hall monitor, because that's a public place. You can get nailed for drinking in public.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, what happened with that? The other thing is the commercials on TV, they say it themselves, Alaska Control Against Tobacco. Did you go up to the fairgrounds last year?
No.
I did not.
You couldn't even smoke in an open-air tent. You had to go outside of the beer tent to smoke on the rickety old table they threw out back. And, you've got all that charcoal on the barbecues, and you've got the diesel pumping rides and everything, but, you can't smoke in the beer tent.
I've always wondered why the state is so against smoking and tobacco when they make so much money off the taxes.
I'll tell you what, 17% of my tobacco buying goes right towards children's development and welfare.
Really?
It's a development, yeah, 17% of my tobacco purchase goes right to that.
Mandated philanthropy.
So
And it's like you said, there's just too much control out there. I was outside of UAF one time, 50 feet from the door, within my rights, and I got somebody walked up to me. It's a middle-aged woman, and she said, geez, Crow, we can smell you. Could you stop smoking? And I told her no. And she got all put out because I stood up to her and said no. Not used to getting no told to her.
Oh, when I ran for the assembly, I had several people say, "Oh, you know, something you need to do in the borough is pass an ordinance to end smoking in bars." And I said, "I'm not going to tell private business owners what to do in their own bars. I mean, if somebody doesn't like cigarette smoke, then don't go to that bar.
Hey,
there are bars that don't have smoking. Like
yeah, of course there are.
Like the Blue Loon. You can't smoke in the Blue Loon.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Adam out there, he's kind of gotten a little out of hand as far as that goes.
Well, yeah, but that's his choice. I mean, I commend him for it. He set up a nice.
I was up there at the Ivory Jacks, and the non-smoking side was empty, and the smoking side. I mean, you draw a line. It's like you're sitting next to the table that's non-smoking, and right across the line, you're smoking. So I decided to test the waters. I went and smoked on the non-smoking side because nobody was there. And the woman says, "You're going to put that out? $50 fine." I said, "I'll give you $50. Get the smoke cop up here." And they just left me alone.
Yeah, it's
well, but I mean,
it should be left up to the market. If people want to have smoking and non-smoking sections, that's fine. If there are smoking establishments and you don't like the smell or you don't smoke, then don't go to them.
Yeah, and I forgot,
Absolutely.
and I DJ a lot, and I had forgotten how bad the cigarette smoke was at some of these bars, and I DJ'd at another bar, and I, it was amazing to me. But again, I would never tell somebody not. I would never say, "Oh, they should pass a law to end smoking in a especially when you can drink." You know what I mean? It's
right.
like you can get as drunk as you want, but for the love of God, don't light a cigarette.
Well, hey, thanks for putting up with me.
Hey, thanks for calling in,
no
man.
No problem. Ready for the next one?
So, smokers are actually we're treating them in a way that shouldn't be treated because they're actually giving, like you said, through philanthropy to dozens of charities.
Well,
I mean, they're saving the children. Go buy a pack of smokes because you're saving the children right now.
They give more money than I do.
Yeah.
They're part of the proposed tax hikes federally include raising the federal tax on cigarettes. And there's always been this long-standing argument that taxing cigarettes is a direct tax upon the poor.
Right.
Because the bulk of chain smokers and habitual smokers is people who are below the poverty line.
Yeah. Isn't taxation supposed to be apportioned?
So what's funny to me is these people have this misconception that by taxing Camel and Pall Mall and Philip Morris, that somehow these companies are going to pay more. It just raises the price of cigarettes.
Right.
But people don't care because they look at smokers as the unclean and you obviously have expendable income if you can go and smoke a product that is knowingly going to kill you prematurely. Ready for
or so they say, yeah.
So,
go ahead.
I was looking another thing about the drug war when they first start against opium, and who used the opium at that time? Were the Chinese workers. They were competing with main work here in America. And then after that was the marijuana, because that was who smoked marijuana at that time was the Mexicans. And they were the majority of the cheap labor at that time. So they started to punish them. And now it came the crack. And the majority was doing that. Was the black people that was start to be the cheap labor on that time. Then after that, now we have the meth. And that's getting the poor guy the white guy on a trailer house. And so the way they put up this was pretty interesting because kind of makes sense. Seem like to have a correlation with those kind of people segments were being targeted.
If you look at the demographics of who uses cocaine and who uses methamphetamines, they both have the same type of physical reaction to using them. But rich white people use cocaine, and poor people and minorities use meth. And so, but the penalties involved for cocaine possession or meth possession are incredibly different, far more intrusive and oppressive for meth possession than it is for cocaine.
Really?
And the same was with cocaine and the crack. The penalties for the crack was like 100 times more than what the cocaine was. But who's crack was exact same thing as actually was watered down cocaine.
Well, politicians want to make sure they can afford the fine if they get caught. Probably.
So there's a new documentary. I'm glad you brought this up because there's a new documentary coming out very soon, and it's called "How to Make Money Being a Drug Dealer," and they go into all the ins and outs of how selling drugs works and on the war on drugs. And so there's 3 reasons marijuana will never be legal across the country is because drug dealers don't want it, drives down prices.
Yep.
The lawyers don't want it because it represents the largest cash income of their representation, and the DEA doesn't want it because 90% of the budget for the war on drugs is devoted to stopping and finding marijuana. And so, if they legalize it, then the argument could be made that we need to cut your budget by 90%, and they do not want that.
And who would buy marijuana if legalized? Because everybody could plant in their backyard.
Well, that's exactly right. They don't want to do that.
Right. And the other one that doesn't want it is the medical association. The medical association.
Pharmaceuticals.
Right. Pharmaceutical companies do not want it legalized because it's, you hear all kinds of things about the suppression of the medical benefits to recreationally smoking marijuana.
And with hemp, that is not, you can't smoke. It's not going to do anything with you. Would be legalized too, and then we have a big competition against fibers and a whole bunch, oil and.
Okay, but the whole thing with hemp is you can within like 4 or 5 generations you can selectively breed and crossbreed enough THC into hemp to be able to make it worth your while to smoke.
But at the same time, you're still taking a product
I'm channeling Frank Turney now.
You're still taking a product that could be used. I mean, hemp oil and the fabric and stuff, it's obviously something that's cheap, it's easy to make, and blah, blah, blah. And if the marijuana laws were gone in the first place, you wouldn't care if there was this crossing. And the whole war on drugs is an absolute failure anyways. I mean, it's bazillions upon bazillions of dollars pumped into this thing, and it's done nothing but create more violence because there's profit in the black market side of it, and there's profit on the prosecution side of it. So they don't ever, like you said, they'll never want to get rid of it, even though it's an abject failure, because I don't smoke or do any drugs, but I'm pretty sure I could probably walk out here and just say, I need some marijuana, and someone would show up at the end of the show and have some for sale.
Well, right.
That's just how easy. It's stupid.
And if I go out and commit terrible acts of violence, how is that any different whether I am or am not on meth? I mean, it's still a terrible act of violence. I mean,
and if you're smoking marijuana, you might be harming your own body, and you're not committing acts of violence. Why should you be taken from your family and thrown in jail for X amount of years?
So I shouldn't be able to buy razor blades either then?
Well, you could hurt yourself.
I could.
So it was a little experiment done. So somebody asked kids, underage kids, kids, to get a bottle of alcohol or a beer, and all the kids were told, get some marijuana. The kids for the alcohol took hours and they were not able to get. And the kid with marijuana, in 20 minutes, they were there with marijuana.
Wow.
Where do these kids go to school? Ready for another call?
That's pathetic.
Ready?
Yeah.
You there?
Yeah, here.
Excellent.
How you doing, man? This is Billy.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good. I'd like to take it back to this lockdown in Boston.
Yes.
I got something to say about that. I spent some time thinking about this last week. If there's ever any reason America to enforce a lockdown, whether any mayor would ever have any reason to do that, and I can't think of one, so I would challenge anybody, first off, to give me a reason why there would ever be any need to do that, because the worse your problem is, whatever your problem is, whether it's a big fire or whether it's some mad bomber or whether it's a nuclear device or whatever it is, the bigger the problem, the more first responders you'd want out there. If it's a nuclear bomb, you want people to run for their lives. So I don't see any reason to ever lock down, and therefore I am proposing, I'm even advocating, I'll say that on the radio so they can put me in prison if they want to, I am advocating a plan for people to do. This is not a thing they'd have to join. It's only a mentality to take on. If we take on the mentality that says, I will not comply with a lockdown. In fact, if I hear about a lockdown, whatever I'm doing, I'll stop doing, and I'll arm up, and I will go to my home, maybe not even in that order, but I'll arm up and I will watch my neighborhood. And all the people I see who have agreed with me to do so will check on each other, and I will actually talk about this with my friends, the ones I can trust, so that if there's ever a lockdown, every righteous man will be on the street corner with a gun.
And, you know, you made a good point with the, wouldn't you rather have civilians, quote unquote, out looking for this person, going about their daily lives? What more chance? I mean, the law enforcement didn't find him. It was actually a civilian that found him in the first place. And just because he broke the law by leaving his home, he snuck out and hid behind his boat to have a cigarette.
So what everybody can do independently who's listening to me, you first, in your own mind, try to justify whether there would ever be an actual emergency so severe that a lockdown would be the proper answer. I can't think of a one. Zombie apocalypse? No. You want everybody out there with guns. You don't want them locked down in their houses. Whatever it is. Then secondly, if you agree with me, don't join any organizations. Don't start any organizations. Don't talk about it publicly. I probably won't again. But take the mentality that says, I'm not going to go for a lockdown. If I hear about a lockdown, I'm going to assume that the government is saying that everyone should go to their homes unless they're armed. Everyone should go to their homes unless they're a first responder. And I'm a first responder, so I'm going to arm up and get in the street, or in my case, I'll watch the highway where I'm at. And if everybody takes that attitude, then the first time some fool mayor in this particular little burg decides a lockdown is the proper thing to do, he'll learn different.
Yep. That's the whole point of why we talked about it in the first, because I've been thinking about this all week too. It just bugs me. I mean, talk about a slow fade into totalitarianism. These people didn't raise a peep. They just did exactly what they were told.
I think the Boston lockdown is going to be a blot, if you will, but it'll also be compared to the Boston massacre as an event that really catalyzes a lot of people's thinking.
I hope so. That's why I wanted to talk about it today, because I hope it does, I said, catalyze people to think that was wrong. Why did we let this happen?
I think he have a good point, because when let's say Josh was living in Boston and say, I'm not going to comply with this, and he go outside and not comply, he's going to be shot. But you need a mentality, everybody got to say, no, you're not going to accept that, and everybody go out, then there's nothing they could do about it. But individuals, what here and there, that wouldn't work.
The people, it's got to be, yeah. Go ahead.
Just having a plan if there's a fire, get with your neighbors and have a plan in case there's a lockdown. You go out there and you blockade the streets around your own neighborhood, and then you have them at every exit watching and looking for trouble. And if the police come by, you salute them, and they'll come over and say, what are you doing? There's a lockdown. You'll say, yeah, I know. We've locked down this area just fine. Go somewhere where there's trouble because we've got this place covered.
Yeah.
And if they go neighborhood to neighborhood and there's plenty of guys taking care of the neighborhoods, then they'll go find out whatever the trouble is. What they need to do is have like an Amber Alert system. Did you notice there wasn't any kind of Amber Alert for this kind of thing? That's what they needed to do, was to have an Amber Alert and say, here's the situation. Look around you and make sure there's no bombs around you.
People have got to internalize what you're saying, decide for yourself. And that's what I'm asking. Decide for yourself what you're going to do now. Decide for yourself, is this correct, what they did? If it's not, do your rights overcome and circumvent the supposed right that the state has to lock you down in your home? Do you have the right to life, liberty, and your property? Do you have the right for the pursuit of happiness? Did they have the right to shut down businesses? Who knows how many billions of dollars, or at least millions of dollars, that were lost in the market over that period of time because the state decided, well, we're going to lock everyone down. Those businesses didn't shut down because of the bombs. They shut down because of the terrorist state.
Yep. But the point is, this ought to settle the question once and for all. Will people give up their guns? Yeah, they will. Will people be tolerated if they want to go house to house and yank them out naked in the street? Yeah, they will.
Yep, they did.
So if you won't tolerate it, you'd better make sure that the people who live immediately around you won't tolerate it, or you'll be the one sitting there watching them come down the street, house by house, and everybody is being yanked out, and you'll be trying to decide, what do I do? That's a dumb place to be. Figure out who it is around you you can trust, and if you can't figure that out, move.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the only thing I don't think it would work, just people put in their mind, for that to happen, gotta have some kind of organization for people to say, let's do this. If that happens, let's do this. And you need to have enough people to join that, or not formally,
have
but
to be organized. That was the great thing about the first American Revolution, was it wasn't an organized battle. It was people that loved liberty. You came and went as you please. You weren't inducted into this army that you had to serve for blah blah blah. You were a part of this citizen militia. Didn't even have to be the militia. You just came. You said, "I'm here to fight for 3 days for liberty." So they fought 3 days, and then they were free to go. Come and go as you please.
But if people don't have this mentality today, and they are going, even there is resistance in their mind. If they go out, they're afraid, I'm going to be shot because I'll be there by myself. If you don't know that your neighbor and the other neighbor are going to be there too, then you get more bold, and then you do it.
That's what I'm saying. Get to know your neighbors, and if they will not cooperate, move.
So, you're right.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for the call.
Call, are you there?
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, what are they going to do next? Are they going to consider sugar and coffee a drug? And I think as far as this war on drugs, the government has mountains of all that stuff. It's just a great big game. And anyway, that's what I think.
Well, they already are. I mean, we have the mighty benevolent, what's his name, Bloomberg, decided that 16 ounces of soda pop was against, anything over 16 ounces of soda was against the law. And they already, by ways of regulations, they regulate and restrict sugars and just like that in foods right now, don't they?
One of the funny ones I saw, though, was the tobacco industry wanted to make sports drinks that had nicotine in them, and the FDA will not allow nicotine as a food additive, which I think would be pretty awesome.
You know what makes me wonder, if you see our government is trafficking weapons to criminals in Mexico, I just wonder another way around, if they don't traffic drugs too, for whatever reasons.
Hey, I gotta go. Bottom of the hour news. Oh, whoops, I missed it.
Oh, well, let's listen to the song.
All right then.
Oh, this would actually be fun if I would read Thomas Jefferson while this is playing. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that this people preserve the spirit of resistance? Shall I go on? Let them take arms. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. laws that forbid the carrying of arms disarm only those that are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. Such laws make things worse for the assaulted and better for the assailants. They serve rather to encourage than to prevent homicides, for an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed man.
So the problem with that, though, is you get a lot of people that they say gun control laws don't affect me because I don't own a gun. But to me, that's a mentality people need to get out of. People need to get out of the idea that, hey, that law doesn't affect me, so what do I care? I had a guy just the other day. They're trying to build a bike path along the road that I live in. Mm-hmm. And I and many of my neighbors were very opposed to it. And a guy asked me about it. He said, well, what do you think of this bike path? He didn't know my position. I said, well, I really don't want it because they're going to cut down all my trees and put this bike path in, and I think it's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve. And he said, yeah, if I lived there, I'd be really mad about it too. He goes, but I don't live there. I live 2 blocks over.
So I don't care.
And no, he said, but it'll be good for me, so I want it. Well, what kind of mentality is that? If I don't care that it harms you, as long as it benefits me. And a lot of these gun laws are that way too. People aren't looking. They think, well, what do I care about gun laws because I don't carry one? Well, it's not the idea whether you own one or not. It's if you want to have the choice to own one, or someday somebody is. I mean, and up here I see it all the time where. I work on cars for a living, and quite often when I go to get in a car, there's a handgun under the seat, or there's a handgun in the map pocket, or and I'm always happy to see that.
It hasn't shot you yet?
I don't own any guns, but I'm glad to see lots of people own lots of guns.
You get robbed all the time.
I never get robbed. So, but I would never support onerous gun laws because at some point I want to have the choice to own a gun, and I don't think that my decision not to own one should affect your decision to want to own one.
Well, and the whole point with what you're talking about with the bike path and everything, why do people, well, it's good for you, it's good for me, might not be good for you, but whatever. That's because we've gotten away from individual liberties and rights to where, it's your property. Who cares if it benefits someone else? It's your property to do what you please to do with. This whole thing of socialism and community and it's good for the people. It's the betterment of the community. That's all garbage. Our only concern is the betterment of the individual and the preservation of their rights, because the preservation of each man's rights
I don't have a problem
is the gain of community.
I don't have a problem with the benefit of the community.
I do.
Oh, no, hold on. I don't have a problem with the benefit of the community.
Because you're a socialist.
No, let me finish. You keep interjecting. I don't have a problem with the benefit of the community if, like my bike path, for example, if everybody whose house that it went past, if they all said, yeah, we'd like a bike path, and they all chipped in together to build a bike path, go right ahead.
Right, but that's not the general idea of community.
That's not what's happening. What's happening is there's a group of people who wanted it, not so much that they're willing to pay for it, mind you.
Is it state funds or borough? Or?
We stopped it. But there's a group of people that wanted it to the extent that they called somebody and said, hey, it'd be pretty cool to have it. And there's a group of people that didn't want it, those people whose backyard it was going to go past and cut down all their trees. And I will say, in all fairness, that process, whether you disagree with it or not, a group of people wanted it, a group of people didn't, and the group of people who didn't rallied. They made excellent and pertinent arguments, and they were able to get it to go away.
Simple argument, right?
They shouldn't have had to go through all that, but it was nice to see all those people, all those neighbors got together that said, hey, this is going to affect me, and it's not going to solve the problems that these other people say they want fixed. So anyway, it was good to see that those people pulled together, and that the the politicians.
How much time did you have to waste because of that? See, in my society, the question would have never came up because it's your property, and no one has the right to your property.
No,
if they want something.
but it wasn't my property. It was my neighbor's property, and it's I live on a pond,
right?
And so the tree.
So they wanted to have to deal around.
No. The trees on the one side of the pond they were going to cut down, and it wasn't. In all fairness, it wasn't my backyard that it was getting cut out of, but I do live on that pond, and so we all got involved to find an alternative solution to the problem. But anyway, I digress. It's not my show. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's interesting. Goes back to the whole community socialism.
Yeah, but we were able to squash it. Caller, are you there? Hello?
Would that be me?
That would be you.
Oh, hey there.
Turn your
I'm just one of the latest victims of this British Realty law that we're living under. I guess our courts are being run on what they call trustee law, which is regulated by the Bar Association, which stands for British Realty Regulators. And we're subjects, and pardon my voice, by the way. I got a little case of the camp crud, but I'll get over it. But hey, Frank, and thanks for coming to my court. And I was the guy that was pulled over at the end of Rolling Road that got yanked out of his car with a gun to my head by state troopers, by the way. And also didn't get any charges brought to me in black and white for about 90 days when I was calling you guys from the halfway house for you guys that...
Yeah, I remember.
Well, what a mess that is. That GO and our government, they're into warehousing people, and they want to make criminals out of all of us.
There's good money in it.
This trustee law, I was trying to figure it out, and if anybody can elaborate on it. But what I understand is you're the executor of your name. That's why your court papers come to you in capital letters. But by making a plea of guilty or not guilty when they try to charge you with a crime, you automatically go from, if you say guilty or not guilty, you go from being the executor to the trustee. And then the court clerk and the DA and the judge all become the beneficiaries. And
yeah, there's some arguments about that. I know what you're talking about. A lot of that came from the quote unquote sovereignty movement. The real deal, there's no doubt, I think it was 1933, somewhere in there, that our courts were put under admiralty law, which is why the government which is why presidents have this basically judicial power. They have the power to create law at will. This is why they have the power to do this and that just based off executive order, which is how when the National Defense Authorization Act was enacted and sections 1021, 1022 were put in there, and people ask, well, how can you actually have something where you can detain someone indefinitely without due process? And they looked back to the Quorum Law, which was a decision that happened during World War II. And what the justices decided during World War II was when President Roosevelt at the time arrested some German soldiers that had snuck into the United States, but there were 2 German Americans that were involved in it, and they were going to do some sabotage and whatever. And Roosevelt arrested these American Germans, who were American citizens, and held them without due process. And so they went to court, went to the Supreme Court, and they said, well, how can you hold them without due process? They're American citizens. And at the time, the justices found, yes, but the United States is under martial law, which allows the president to make these decisions as the commander-in-chief. So that's how today Lisa Murkowski actually used the Quorum case to justify her voting for the sections 1021 and 22 of the National Defense Authorization Act. She said, well, look at this case. It says that blah, blah, blah. So I looked at the case, and the whole premise of it was that the United States is, in fact, under martial law. which is why they can make these decisions, which preempts the so-called Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So if you really get down to it, it's all because we are under martial law. We have been since 1933. We're under admiralty courts, admiralty jurisdictions.
And that's why
they can actually do whatever they feel like doing.
We're not innocent until proven guilty. We're guilty until proven innocent.
Right, and the problem with answering guilty or not guilty, when you say that you're guilty, obviously you're saying you did it. If you say I'm not guilty, the real problem with that is you're saying I did not do the act that you accused me of. The proper phrase, the proper plea should be innocent. I am innocent of wrongdoing. Whether I did what you say I did has no bearing on whether what I did was right or wrong. That would go back to common law and the way things ought to be, but today we are under admiralty law, and such as that.
We're considered. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead.
We're considered what the word I'm trying to use is. They think we're stupid. We're subjects. That's the word I was looking for. We're subjects. They think we're stupid, so by giving them a plea, we automatically give them consent to charge us with a crime to begin with.
No, you do have a point there, and that goes back to what I was saying with martial law. We are under martial law. I mean, we have never really talked about that because people get nuts and they think you're a conspiracy theorist, but all you have to do is read back into Supreme Court cases, and our illustrious Lisa Murkowski told us that they are operating today based on judicial decisions from the 40s, and in the 40s, the Supreme Court said the United States is, in fact, under martial law. When people say, how is it that Roosevelt, and I think Roosevelt's probably, I don't know, it's a juggle between Roosevelt and Lincoln of who was the absolute worst president and most tyrannical of all. I mean, it's like flip a coin, either one. But Roosevelt actually, people say, how in the world could he have rounded up hundreds of thousands of American Japanese people and put them in concentration camps? Of course, we call them internment camps,
Internment camps.
Because we can't say that they're concentration camps, because that's what those stinking Germans did, the Nazis and the commies. We intern.
I'd like to just say on one other subject that you guys were talking about earlier, about victimless crimes and these DUI crimes, there should be a scale, like there's different scales with misdemeanors and felonies. There should be a different scale of, being caught driving intoxicated. Were you sleeping in your car and you had your heater running, or were you
well, that'll get you shot in Anchorage.
Line, or did you have an accident, or there should be different levels. I think
there is a scale, but the difference is that there's no scale in perpetrating crimes against the state, and because state crimes are arbitrary, whatever they decide at the time and place. But under common law, there is a scale. When you harm someone's life, liberty, or property, you compensate according to what you did, not according to what some judge decides upon.
When you get a DUI, though, you're supposed to be, you pay your debt to society, they used to say. But when you get a DUI, they bring up your past for the last 30 years. They were bringing up stuff on me that was 30 years ago. And one of them was swindle. Have you ever heard that one? It's not even in the law books up here in Alaska, but down in Florida, it was like I got intoxicated and left the bar without paying my tab, and jumped in the cab and went home. But when I went back there, they arrested me, and it was called swindle.
You swindled
like Mr. Haney on Green Acres.
Huh. Yeah, the only time I really heard of that was in the Great Brain books. The Great Brain always swindled his brother.
Hey, I think we should have a hot dog roast, and everybody get together down at our state park, the one that we bought with our taxpayers' money, and have a hot dog roast sometime down on Chenapump Road, down on the river.
All right,
or else cut the locks off of the park over on University Avenue so we can use it, because we're the taxpayers that paid for it.
Well,
right, but we don't own it.
Thanks for the call. Next caller. Caller, you there?
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, this is Steve. In my hand here, I'm holding a bag of red mill hulled hemp seed. It's got a picture of a heart on the front of it, and it says "Friend of the Heart." Reading it on the front of the bag, it says hemp seed may be one of nature's most perfect foods. With a pleasant nut-like flavor and creamy texture, our hulled hemp seed is a nutritious and delightful addition to cereals, salads, and baked goods.
Were any of those statements verified by the FDA?
Yes. Actually, I heard about this at the cardiac rehab.
Oh, really?
What kind of rehab?
Hulled hemp seed is high in omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acid and an excellent source of protein containing all of the essential amino acids. Now, that's what we heard in cardiac rehab, was that hulled hemp seed is the perfect protein. And us that have heart disease need to find foods that are perfect proteins without the fat and such to them, because once you get work on your heart, it's but just the economic end of this, I bought this particular bag about 2 months ago. I ordered it from Alaska Feed Company, and it was $12.99 for 12 ounces of hulled hemp seed. I went back and to reorder, and it's $19.99 now, 3 months later. It seems like now, if you've ever seen wild, I'm from Wisconsin originally, the hempen mills from World War II, where they made cloth and parachute cord and shoelaces and everything else out of hemp. The hemp still grows wild in the fields. If you don't cultivate a field for a while, it just grows up in wild hemp. But the seeds underneath those they produce so much seed that it'll lie 6 inches deep on the ground underneath the plants. It's quite an agricultural crop. If hulled hemp seed is selling for almost close to $2 an ounce, that is one of the most expensive grains on the market, and it grows readily just about everywhere. It grows in poorer soils. It doesn't need a lot of fertilizer. It actually conditions the soil and loosens it up. If you've got lumpy ground and such from clay and such, the hemp root system loosens the ground.
I know Frank Turney's been advocating someone trying to grow it here for quite a while.
Well,
I don't know.
Why is it outlawed? There's no THC in it.
Well,
it's a perfect food.
And the thing is, I'm not trying to deter from any of the claims that you're making from that, but to me, this is where corporations have too powerful of an influence over government, because I can very easily see Pfizer and
DuPont,
Johnson and Johnson, any of the places that make any of the things that they convince you have to be able to live healthy. They get in and make the influence to outlaw and perpetrate the stigmatism about hemp, so that it doesn't become legal. So that same thing with marijuana.
Corporatism.
I mean, how is Price Pfister going to make, or how's Pfizer going to make any money if you can just grow what you need in your backyard instead of having to get a prescription for it? I mean,
when I was a boy walking to school, up along the Highway 127, both sides of the road, where those days they mowed about 4 feet off the shoulder of the road, and that's it. The rest grew wild. There was a multitude of butterflies and birds and such, and all these plants growing, which now in my old age I read about being healthy and doing it nature's way. And these weeds were the milk thistle, which I buy in capsules now because it's good for the liver. The hospital even brings that up. The burdock root is a blood purifier that grew wild along the road. But all these different things got called noxious weeds, and then they started spraying.
Invasive.
Well, once they started spraying, the butterflies disappeared, the birds disappeared, and now we have programs to protect the birds, for Christ's sake. You know, it's just so asinine that what we do, because somebody tells somebody this is what they should do, instead of any research done. And now we go to the health food store and we buy these things imported from, this hemp seed's imported from Canada, by the way. I can't grow it here. But Bob's Red Mill Flour Company, that the stores are full of their products.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to move on because we're running out of time. We've got lots of callers here, but it goes back, what Matt said is exactly spot on the money. I hate to say that, but it is fascism. It's corporatism, where the corporations have gotten in bed with the state and said, here, we need you, we'll give money to you for this campaign of this, we'll go along with this and that, but we need you to restrict, confine, and do away with blah, 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 so we can get rich. And by the way, we'll give you so many shares.
Well, I mean, they demonize. I mean, they really demonize a lot of the attributes of marijuana. But in California,
all kinds of stuff.
California, it's okay for state-regulated companies to grow it. And
well, then it's good for you if it's state and regulated.
Right, as long as the medical association has prescribed it to you, then it's okay. But other than that, you must be a criminal if you're going to try to use it. Ready for the next call?
Yeah.
Caller, are you there?
Hi, is that me?
Yeah.
It is you.
Hey, I've only been listening for the past half hour. This is the first time I've ever listened to you guys, and you're hitting a lot of topics I want to talk about, but I'll try to be a lot quicker than the other guys.
Go ahead.
First of all, hemp. You can find pictures from 1923 from Arlington Farm. That's the land the Arlington Cemetery is on. That's the land the Pentagon is built on. It was literally a government hemp farm on the land that the Pentagon is currently sitting on. And you can find pictures of big fields of 13, 15, they look like 20-foot tall hemp plants. And that's just pretty neat. Just look up Arlington Hemp Farm, 1920s. And secondly, you were saying concentration camps, and the guy brought up GEO or GEO, and hold on, I gotta catch my breath. I'm nervous here. Sorry.
You're doing good, man.
But last month, or like the past few months, they had won the rights to name a stadium in Florida. This is one of the largest private prison groups in the world naming a stadium, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. In Watertown, their National Guard is right part of a big sports complex. And our National Guard in town by the Carlson Center is part of our sports complex, right by the prison. And you can go back to World War II, and right now in Myanmar and in India, and right now in Syria and Libya and all these places, and Chile in the 80s and 70s and stuff, where they use sports facilities as prison camps. And you go by the National Guard in town here, and they've got all the equipment that you saw in pictures from Watertown this past month. And you've got senators and stuff the past year saying, got to prepare for civil unrest because of immigration. And they're talking about Alaska saying that. And you go by there and they've got all the equipment for roadblocks and snow machines and 3-inch thick bulletproof windows and giant people carriers. And I am 100% not advocating violence because I couldn't dream of the equipment they've got, and I don't want to die, and I especially don't want to die violently. But it's just something people need to think about.
Definitely.
And it certainly explains a connection between the Justice Department and Lance Armstrong with all of these places using sports complexes as their hideouts for
wow,
tanks and
you
stuff.
really dug that one up. Well, thanks for the call. We're on every Saturday, so listen in again.
All right, caller, are you there?
This is Randy.
Hello, Randy.
Hi. On the Miranda rights, I was just kind of reading about it. I see that the Supreme Court decision to say that the police must tell them their Miranda rights or their rights, the Miranda warning, came about in 1966, but I would agree with what was said earlier in the program that we've always had those rights, whether they're stated to the suspect by the police or not. The right to remain silent, the right to not be compelled to be a witness against yourself, the right to have counsel and so forth. In the case of this bombing case in Boston, though, I think it was probably good that they did question the guy before they officially told him his Miranda, quote-unquote, Miranda rights, because prior to that, he gave him a lot of information, but after they told him these rights, then he clammed up. But I would agree that from the moment, from before he was born, he had those rights. But I think it was good that they questioned him prior to stating that he had those rights. What do you think?
I think that it's not right when the cops played dirty.
Well, prior to 1966, do you think the cops, since our Revolutionary War to 1966, were always playing dirty? Because they did not tell them?
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, really, we can have a show from 1887 or 1787. I can show some dirty from then on. I mean,
well, what about from in 1800? Were they being dirty?
I just said 1787. They were playing dirty.
Okay,
yeah.
I see, right.
They were playing dirty from 1787 with the ratification of the Constitution of the United States. Alexander Hamilton, liar.
Oh, I see. Okay.
John Jay, liar.
But in this bombing case, in the Boston bombing case, isn't it good that they got information out of that guy and got him to spill the beans about different things?
Who cares? I mean, there
what,
wasn't any
what
difference.
benefit was there anyways,
there was
Randy?
no difference than
Well, they prevented... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What did they prevent?
Well, I was about to say they prevented the bombing in Times Square, but that wasn't due to what they questioned him. That was just due to apprehending him, so that was a good thing. But in something like this, you want to get all the information you can in case there is a wider plot, in case there's other people involved. You want to gather all the information.
Should you waterboard him?
No. No American citizen should have any kind of torture at all.
Hey, I hate to cut you off, but bottom of the hour, up next.
Okay.
Scott and Health Talk. We're out.